A story born from falling sand begins to take shape.
The Monkey King escorted Sanzeng on the journey for the sacred scriptures. With his mission complete, he pleaded with Buddha to remove the golden circlet.
At Buddha's command, Sun Wukong reached for his head. In disbelief, he felt the golden circlet simply crumble into dust.
He was granted a new title, the Victorious Fighting Buddha.
He was now the victorious fighting Buddha, his journey finally over.
But 1400 years would pass in the blink of an eye. Deep in the second Avīci Hell, ancient enemies were imprisoned.
It was a grief for all evil, where Yakshas faced eternal torture.
A tormented Yaksha cried out, pleading for release from his suffering. His pleas were met only with a swift and brutal strike. The Yaksha looked up as a strange vortex tore open the sky.
A single black feather sliced through the very fabric of hell.
The other Yakshas could only stare in utter confusion and shock. From the swirling vortex, a mysterious figure began its descent into hell. A man with flowing white hair appeared, radiating an immense and terrifying power. His crimson eyes blazed with fury as he roared out a single name.
He had roared the name Ursula, and now the damned cried out for her salvation. The guardians of this hell roared in absolute fury at the intrusion. An entire legion of hell's wardens descended upon the mysterious figure, but the man simply extended his hand, gathering a sinister energy. That violent energy twisted and warped, forming shadowy tendrils of malice.
A colossal beam of dark power erupted, tearing through the depths of hell. A furious warden lunged forward, determined to crush the mysterious man.
But the man simply declared himself a revolutionary, a harbinger of change. This declaration of revolution only fueled the warden's uncontrollable fury.
With a single motion, his shadowy power tore the wardens to pieces.
A rain of dismembered bodies fell, a testament to his absolute might.
He declared that this slaughter was merely the beginning of his revolution. His revolution was a promise written in blood and fury. Meanwhile, far above in the heavens, a golden streak approached the emperor's palace.
The victorious fighting Buddha, Sun Wukong, raced onward with grim determination.
His golden cloud blazed a path toward the Jade Emperor's palace.
The victorious fighting Buddha appeared in his full battle armor.
He skidded to a halt directly before the Jade Emperor's throne. He questioned the Jade Emperor's summons with a shocking lack of deference. The Emperor roared, questioning if Wukong's new title made them equals.
Wukong met the Emperor's rage with a cold, dismissive glance.
Wukong remained silent, the distance between them a physical chasm.
He mocked the Emperor's age, calling him a geezer from the bottom of the stairs.
His patience worn thin. He threatened to leave over the pointless argument.
The Emperor's fury finally subsided, replaced by cold resolve.
He promised to show Wukong the reason for his urgent summons. Before him, a shimmering portal crackled with an unknown, dark energy. His golden eyes narrowed, reflecting the hellish scene displayed within the portal.
The Emperor explained that the ancient prisoners of Avīci Hell were now free. Wukong stared in disbelief, realizing the seal on Hell was completely broken. The Jade Emperor downplayed the threat, mocking Hell's supposed weakness.
He then commanded the victorious fighting Buddha to capture every single escapee.
Wukong was stunned, questioning why he was being sent to clean up the mess. The Emperor's arrogant demeanor crumbled, now begging for Wukong's help.
A confident smirk played on the Monkey King's lips.
He asked why he, of all the gods, was chosen for this mission. The Emperor's confidence returned, asking who else but the victorious fighting Buddha could fight them. Wukong feigned deep thought, humming to himself as he considered the offer. He was the great sage equal to heaven, the handsome Monkey King, and now a Buddha. The Emperor explained that all his titles pointed to a single, undeniable truth. He was chosen because he was, without a doubt, the strongest being in existence. His ego satisfied, Wukong now asked where the escaped spirits had fled to. The Emperor declared they had fled to the one place that breeds great chaos, a realm completely unprepared for the coming storm, the human world.
In an instant, the Monkey King stood poised high above the mortal realm.
He casually plucked a single hair from his head.
With a single breath, he unleashed his cloning magic.
The single hair multiplied into an unstoppable army of himself.
With a piercing gaze, he issued a single, chilling order to his clones. The army of Wukongs instantly scattered, a golden tide flooding the skies. He knew the escaped spirits would need to possess human bodies to hide. He knew his true form as a Buddha would draw far too much attention. His own immense power would act as a perfect cloak, hiding him from the spirits.
Bored with his life as a Buddha, he chose a human with low spiritual resonance. This was the human he chose, a boy familiar with suffering. His phone clattered to the floor, the screen cracking from the impact.
The bully taunted him, declaring it a perfect strike in their cruel game.
The boy could only stare blankly, completely numb to the daily torment.
A cruel smirk spread across the bully's face, a snake tattoo on his neck.
Suddenly, a sharp slap echoed as the bully struck him across the face. The bully turned to walk away, his cruel work seemingly done for the day.
He then spun back, absurdly blaming the boy for his own broken phone.
Enraged by the boy's silence, he grabbed him violently by the collar. With twisted logic, the bully demanded the boy pay for the broken phone. The boy tried to protest, but the bully's reasoning was completely unshakable. But from within, Wukong realized this body's resonance was far too low. He realized the boy's weak spiritual presence was the perfect disguise for his mission.
With a confident smirk, he officially declared the boy his chosen vessel. A wave of pure terror washed over the boy as he struggled for air.
Wukong commented on the bully's nasty expression, preparing to take control. He announced that from this moment forward, he was in charge. He declared that this body now belonged to the victorious fighting Buddha. The bully recoiled, confused by a sudden surge of static electricity. Golden energy crackled around the boy, his entire presence transformed.
The boy's eyes glowed with divine power as he faced his tormentor.
The bully stumbled back, shocked by the boy's sudden, overwhelming presence.
A confident smirk spread across his face, revealing the Monkey King's spirit. The bully roared, confused and angered by the boy's defiant gaze.
The bully demanded to know if this sudden change was a challenge.
He leaned in close, accusing the boy of secretly fuming with rage.
But Wukong, playing his part, nervously denied any hint of anger. The bully's hand shot out, violently grabbing the boy by the neck.
Wukong maintained his act, his eyes wide with vain terror. With a twisted smile, the bully dared him to unleash his hidden anger. Playing his part perfectly, Wukong stammered out a terrified apology. The bully then demanded a brand new phone as compensation. Believing he had won, the bully turned his back and walked away.
The bullies left, mocking the boy's weakness, oblivious to the god within. Wukong returned to his desk, the boy's lingering despair washing over him. He gasped, finally understanding the depth of this boy's daily suffering.
Wukong felt the boy's dread, a fear of telling his mother about the phone. But then a sudden jolt of awareness snapped him out of his despair.
He searched for the familiar weight of his suffering, but it was completely gone. A female classmate asked what he was searching for in his bag. She pointed out that the glasses he sought were already on his face. Wukong looked up, confused, to see a girl he didn't recognize observing him. He fumbled with his glasses, still disoriented by the human experience. A bead of sweat formed as he tried to process this new interaction. The girl had a kind smile, but her eyes held a strange, knowing look. Through the lenses, her face was a strange, blurry image.
Removing the glasses, he questioned if what he saw was even possible.
She met his confused gaze with a strange, knowing smirk. The girl casually informed him that he was sitting in her seat. Wukong was completely baffled by their simple classroom interaction. The boy's ingrained fear took over, and he frantically apologized to Hina.
Hina remained silent, her gaze piercing through his panicked facade.
Meanwhile, far above the mortal plane, a different crisis was unfolding. The Jade Emperor met with a mysterious woman with long, flowing white hair. The Bodhisattva of compassion asked if Wukong had vanished after his mission began. The Emperor nervously clarified it was an order to hide and hunt among the humans. Wukong was concerned his immense spiritual energy would be a beacon for the spirits. The Emperor realized Wukong was deliberately choosing humans with low resonance.
She worried that if the resonance was too low, he might become lost among humanity.
He then asked if this meant Wukong's immense spiritual energy would transfer to the boy.
She explained the boy's body would strengthen, but act as a heavy chain on Wukong.
The Bodhisattva noticed his deep contemplation, asking what troubled him.
He worried they couldn't wait for Wukong, as Ursula's rebellion was already underway.
She revealed the spirits would target humans with high resonance to gain strength. Their ultimate goal, she explained with a smile, was to take over the heavens.
Baffled by her calm demeanor, the Emperor decided he must aid Wukong's mission.
The Bodhisattva began to channel her immense power into a single point.
A swirling vortex of life energy condensed into a glowing green orb.
That divine power was then forged into a single, potent spiritual pill.
She sent the divine pill flying towards the Jade Emperor.
It settled in his hands, a small bead of immense power. She would manifest in the human realm, using the bead to communicate. She mused that Wukong's presence in a human would be a great shock. The scene shifted back to the human world for a game of dodgeball. The gym teacher split the class into teams before announcing he had to leave.
The students split into 2 teams, the air buzzing with anticipation. The bully held the ball, asking if his next move was legal.
Wukong was completely bewildered by the sudden, direct confrontation.
The bully held the ball with all his might, aiming directly for Wukong's face. But Wukong simply kicked it back, a blur of motion sending it into the bully's face.
He stared in feigned disbelief, as if surprised by his own strength.
The bully roared in disbelief, questioning if the boy had lost his mind.
But the ball ricocheted with incredible force, striking a female classmate.
It didn't stop there, hitting yet another student with brutal impact.
The ball's rampage wasn't over, striking yet another girl with immense force. After its brutal chain of impacts, the ball finally skidded to a halt. The bully stared at the carnage. His classmates scattered across the floor.
A female classmate erupted in fury, declaring this had all gone too far.
But the bully simply smiled, challenging Wukong to dodge the next throw.
Wukong responded with an impossible high kick, sending the ball back with even more force.
The girl who was struck screamed in pain and absolute fury. Even the bully flinched, surprised by her sudden, violent rage.
She leaped into the air, aiming a powerful spike directly at Wukong's head. He feigned total confusion, questioning how he could have kicked the ball so hard. The furious girl thrust the ball into his hands, screaming for him to throw it.
He hesitated for a moment, the ball feeling strange in his human hands.
The bully screamed at him, questioning who he thought he was aiming for. But a strange golden energy began to crackle around the ball.
He realized he couldn't stop the power as he unleashed an unstoppable throw. The ball shot forward, a golden comet of pure, unrestrained power. It narrowly missed the bully, leaving a small cut on his face.
But its destructive journey across the gym was far from over.
The ball slammed into the wall, creating a massive explosion of dust and debris. The bully could only stare in stunned silence at the impossible display of force.
Wukong gasped for air, his golden eyes wide with shock at his own power. A massive crater smoked where the ball had impacted the wall.
The impossible destruction was reflected in his wide golden eyes. He stared at his own hand, questioning the source of this immense power. Far from the city, a peaceful village rested under the afternoon sun.
But a sudden, brilliant flash of light tore across the clear sky.
That light then condensed into a pillar, descending towards the earth. From that divine light, the Bodhisattva of compassion descended to the mortal realm.
Her bare feet touched the soft earth, her presence gentle yet profound. She decided this secluded, overgrown shack would be the perfect place to begin. With a wave of her hand, a powerful green aura enveloped the area.
The abandoned shack was actually a luxurious modern home.
She declared that she was now placing her trust in the human world.
The Bodhisattva, now in a human disguise, approached a modern apartment door. She reached out and pressed the doorbell, her purpose still a complete mystery. As the door opened, her disguise tore away, revealing her true form to the woman inside. The woman walked barefoot into her home, the illusion shattering around her.
With a simple gesture, she invited the divine being to follow. She turned and led the way down a long, pristine hallway. A confident smile played on her lips, her plan now in motion. She was sure that no one could recognize her in this human form.
The next day at school, Wukong's life was about to get far more complicated. The teacher demanded to know how he had destroyed school property.
He was sentenced to write apologies and bring his parents to school.
The mention of his parents sent a jolt of pure panic through him.
The teacher then demanded to know if he had the money to pay for the damages. He was then ordered to the counseling office to begin writing his apologies.
He walked away, his mind racing with how he could possibly explain this at home.
As he sighed in defeat, a sudden poke on his shoulder broke his train of thought.
He spun around to see Hina, who asked if he was in serious trouble.
She argued the bully should be punished, but Wukong didn't recognize this girl.
He frantically searched his memory, questioning if this girl was in his class. The boy's memories suddenly supplied a name, Huang Haiju.
She questioned his strange behavior, asking if he even knew who she was.
He panicked, desperately trying to cover his embarrassing mistake. He insisted he knew her name was Haiju, trying to sound convincing. Haiju simply puffed her cheeks, her expression a mix of confusion and amusement. She expressed her disappointment, saying she shouldn't have even helped him. She stormed off down the hall, leaving Wukong completely stunned and alone. He was left completely bewildered by the entire strange human interaction. The camera then panned to a simple student mailbox in the quiet hallway.
Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the secluded modern home the Bodhisattva had created.
Inside, the woman she met was already hard at work before her glowing monitors.
She navigated to a popular online streaming platform with practiced ease.
A mysterious smile played on her lips as she prepared her broadcast.
With a single click, she began her live stream to the world.
She introduced herself as the new streamer, BJ Hedgie, ready to begin.
Her stream would focus on evil spirits, ghosts, and malicious entities. She explained how these entities grew by absorbing a human spirit and energy. To illustrate her point, she began to sketch a horrifying image for her viewers. Her audience reacted with fear as she posed a chilling question about their growth. A human body provides nourishment, allowing the spirit to root itself and bloom.
She described how they feed on human vitality to become even more terrifying. When a host is drained, the spirit simply finds a new person to feed on. Once strong enough, they take complete control, unleashing their true evil power.
Her viewers flooded the chat with disbelief, calling her delusional.
Suddenly, a large donation of moon balloons appeared on the screen. She smiled, promising to show her disbelieving audience undeniable proof.
A convenience store worker paused his meal, captivated by the broadcast.
Elsewhere, a young gamer leaned in closer, drawn into the mysterious stream.
A woman in a cafe sipped her coffee, her eyes glued to the screen. On a crowded train, passengers were completely engrossed in the mysterious broadcast.
Her viewers mocked her, questioning if she herself was one of these evil spirits.
But then, BJ Hedgie suddenly covered the screen, leaving her audience in total confusion.
The viewer mocked her, asking why she was just showing her palm.
But then a horrifying spirit erupted directly from his monitor. A blood-curdling scream of pure terror erupted from the gamer.
The woman in the cafe dropped her mug, which shattered on the floor. The entire cafe was thrown into chaos by her sudden terrified reaction. She tried to explain the impossible, that a hand had reached out from the screen. On the crowded train, his phone began to tremble violently on the floor. He collapsed in terror, his horrified gasps drawing the attention of everyone around him. The face of BJ Hedgie stared back from the screen, her broadcast now a personal nightmare.
She suddenly paused her stream, leaving her audience in suspense.
Her chat was instantly flooded with terrified messages from all over the world.
With a calm smile, she announced it was time to continue her lesson.
The convenience store worker stared in horror, his spilled meal completely forgotten.
She explained that the entity then begins to whisper directly into your mind. It presents itself not as a monster, but as a trusted friend.
Meanwhile, a lonely girl sat at a bus stop, staring at her phone.
A desperate text to her mother sent hours ago remained unanswered. She let out a sigh of despair, her eyes wide with fear.
The streamer's words echoed in her mind, a terrifying question about possession.
She leaped to her feet, a sudden jolt of terror coursing through her.
She spun around frantically, calling out into the empty night for who was there. She wondered if she had just imagined the voice she heard. Her mind flashed back to the boy who had offered to help her. She remembered how he couldn't even recall her name, acting like a stranger. She stammered in fear, demanding to know the identity of the presence.
A wave of unspeakable dread washed over her terrified face. A piercing scream of pure terror ripped through the silent night.
Just as she screamed, the last bus of the night arrived at the stop.
She questioned her own sanity, wondering if she had imagined the voice.
The bus doors hissed open, offering a potential escape from the darkness.
She frantically scanned the empty bus stop, her heart pounding with fear.
The bus driver's impatient shout snapped her out of her panicked state. She stammered an apology and quickly hurried onto the waiting bus. She tried to rationalize the voice, convincing herself she had imagined it all.
She walked down the aisle of the quiet, empty bus, seeking a seat. But as she turned, her face was a void, her eyes glowing with sinister red light.
The entity's true, monstrous face was finally revealed through her own.
It guided her home to a silent apartment building under the night sky. A desperate text to her mother revealed the pain of a looming divorce. She recounted her painful home life, feeling completely invisible to the world. The memory of Harseon hitting the bully brought her a secret joy. She had even tried to help him, but he didn't know she existed.
The entity's voice taunted her, asking what she had done to deserve this.
She finally arrived home, her face a blank mask of despair.
Empty bottles and overturned furniture greeted her, a familiar sight of despair. She slowly pushed open the door to her brother's dark, silent room.
Her hand reached out, flipping the light switch with a sharp click. Her gaze then fell upon the closet, her next target now clear.
With a sharp click, she activated a small handheld device. She then sat on her brother's bed, her focus turning to her phone. Her text revealed she tried to help Sion, but he didn't even know she existed.
Her final message was a demand, tired of being completely ignored.
Haiji stared at her screen, a gasp of disbelief escaping her lips.
But her desperate pleas were met with cold, deliberate silence.
Her eyes widened in shock as a notification sound broke the oppressive silence.
She scrambled for her phone, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. The reply wasn't from her mother, but from a stranger who now had her old number.
She slumped onto the bed, the weight of her loneliness crushing her spirit.
Strange, sharp growths began to painfully erupt from the back of her hand.
She cried out in despair, wondering who she could possibly turn to now. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted her utter defeat.
The next morning, the sun shone brightly over the school gates.
A sleek black car pulled up, and an elegant woman stepped out. She let out a weary sigh, clearly frustrated by the unexpected summons. This was Sion's mother, now walking grimly towards the school gates.
Her destination was the staff room, where her son's fate would be decided. The teacher showed her a photo of the impossible damage to the gym wall. His mother stared in disbelief, questioning if a human could do this.
The homeroom teacher confirmed that every student's story was exactly the same. His mother sighed in defeat, asking how much she would have to pay for the damages. But the teacher explained an anonymous report had been filed through the suggestion box.
She looked up in shock, questioning what the teacher meant by an anonymous report.
The teacher explained that one more student was involved in the incident. She assumed he was currently in a meeting with another teacher.
The anonymous report detailed how Kwon Suchul viciously tormented his classmates.
The teacher questioned why Sion would dare to retaliate against his tormentor. But Suchul screamed that it was Sion who destroyed the gym wall. Enraged, the teacher roared that the report's contents could get him expelled.
The bully was stunned, ordered to bring his parents to the office by tomorrow.
His rage festered as he stormed out of the teacher's office. He then marched directly into the classroom, his sights set on Sion.
Kwon Suchul stomped through the classroom, his target clear.
Wukong watched him approach, his expression completely unbothered.
He slammed his hand down on the desk with a loud crack. He roared at the class, demanding the person who reported him to raise their hand.
The classroom was completely silent, every student avoiding his furious gaze. But Haiju couldn't hide her fear, her guilt written all over her face.
His gaze fixed on Haiju, his shock quickly turning into cold fury. He pointed a trembling finger directly at the terrified girl.
With a flick of his finger, he summoned her to the front of the class. Wukong maintained his act, asking why the bully was so angry.
But his question was met with a sudden, violent punch to the face.
The sheer force of the blow sent him flying across the classroom.
Both Wukong and Haiju stared in absolute shock at the sudden violence.
The bully stalked forward, his intention to continue the brutal beating clear. He declared he would beat Sion until the anonymous reporter confessed. He crashed to the floor, spitting blood from the force of the attack. Suchul followed up with a vicious kick, determined to inflict more pain. Haiju could only watch in terror, realizing this was all her fault. Haiju's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Suchul sneered, wondering why the reporter still hadn't come forward.
He slammed the boy's head into the ground with vicious force.
He unleashed a furious barrage of punches, determined to break him.
Suchul screamed, questioning if this beating was enough to draw out the snitch. But Wukong met his rage with a bloody grin, asking if that was all he had.
Just as the bully prepared to strike again, another student suddenly confessed.
He repeated his confession, demanding that Suchul stop the senseless beating.
Suchul's fury shifted, promising to kill the boy later for his interference. The student repeated his confession, his voice trembling with fear. But Suchul wasn't convinced, threatening more violence to find the real culprit. Sion could only plead for mercy, his face a bloody mess. But just then, Haiju shot to her feet, her resolve finally breaking her fear.
She finally admitted that she was the one who had written the damning report.
Her confession sent a shockwave through the room, all eyes now fixed on her.
The boy who confessed stared in shock as a dark energy swirled around Haiju.
He remembered seeing her before, a lonely figure walking down the hall. A horrifying realization dawned on him. Something was terribly wrong with that girl.
Her voice trembled as she confessed to writing about all his past cruelties.
The bully's furious gaze locked onto Haiju, his rage now completely redirected.
With a menacing calm, he released Harseon, his focus now entirely on the girl.
He loomed over her desk, his voice dripping with venomous rage.
He leaned in close, whispering a terrifying threat into her ear. With a twisted smile, he promised to show her what real hell looked like.
He whispered a final, chilling threat, telling her not to dare leave early.
With a final curse, the bully left the classroom in complete disarray.
Haiju collapsed into her seat, the bully's terrifying promise echoing in her mind. The entity's voice echoed in her mind, offering to show her its power.
A sinister red light glinted in her eye, a sign of its growing influence. She whipped her head around, a new terrifying presence filling the room. The bully's friends were suddenly thrown to the ground by an unseen force.
Haiju looked around in terror, questioning the identity of this new presence. The entity's voice snarled, demanding to know what the boy was looking at.
Its monstrous face appeared, whispering that it was her only true friend now. It offered to show them all, its crimson hand reaching out to touch her.
The entity embraced her, promising to help her unleash her unforgiving rage. The entity's promise resonated with her, and a sinister smile spread across her face.
She agreed to its terms, her laughter echoing with a newfound, terrifying power. The other student watched as Haiju quietly laughed to herself, a chilling sound in the silent room.
Wukong felt a wave of the boy's guilt, realizing this was all his fault.
But then his golden eyes widened, sensing a familiar, sinister energy.
He realized with horror that the girl was now possessed by an escaped spirit. A wave of dark, malevolent energy erupted from the girl's body.
He questioned what this overwhelming and sinister presence could possibly be.
Just then, the final bell of the day echoed across the school grounds. The students began to pack up, oblivious to the dark energy in the room. But the boy who had confessed earlier suddenly stood up, his gaze fixed. He stared at Haiju, sensing the same sinister presence Wukong had felt. He wondered if he should ask Haiju to have a meal together.
Another classmate asked why he was just standing there, urging him to go eat. He reluctantly followed her, leaving Haiju to sit alone in the darkness.
He took a few steps but couldn't shake a feeling of unease.
Behind him, Haiju sat alone in the darkening classroom. He turned back, a deep sense of dread telling him not to leave. He turned to see Haiju sitting alone, her head bowed in the silent classroom. She began to mutter to herself, her voice a low whisper in the empty room. The entity's voice agreed, whispering that her dark thoughts were absolutely right. Her face twisted into a demonic grin, agreeing that revenge would be fun.
Later in the cafeteria, the boy who had confessed sat down for lunch. His classmate asked why he kept staring at that strange person across the room.
The boy finally remembered Haiju's name, looking over at her with concern.
His classmate commented on how quiet Haiju was, surprised she had the courage to act.
He tried to convince himself she was a good person, but a deep suspicion remained.
His classmate asked about the gym door, but he was still lost in thought. Back in the office, Harseon's mother placed a thick envelope on the teacher's desk.
She declared it was enough, ensuring her son faced no further repercussions.
The teacher accepted the envelope, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief.
She gasped, completely stunned by the sheer amount of money inside.
As his mother walked away, the teacher asked if this amount was truly necessary. The girl gasped, realizing the bribe was 2,000,000 won, a perfect tool for blackmail. Meanwhile, the disciplined teacher was buried in work, his phone suddenly buzzing on the desk. The caller was Suchu's father, who furiously demanded the teacher make this problem disappear. The teacher sarcastically called his demand a heartfelt request, adding a final venomous insult.
The man on the other end of the line casually agreed to the so-called heartfelt request. After hanging up, he informed his friends that Suchu had a new target for them to capture.
The woman questioned her crew, asking about Suchu's target and her strength.
Back at the school, the final bell of the day echoed across the grounds.
Wukong began to pack his bag, the strange day finally coming to a close.
As he prepared to leave, his gaze was drawn to the silent, brooding girl. He fell into deep thought, weighing his options on how to handle the spirit. But his intense focus was broken by the girl, who asked what was wrong. The student warned his friend to stay away from Haiju, recalling the bully's threat. His friend quickly left, not wanting any part of the coming conflict.
Haiju walked past them, her presence cold and unsettling in the quiet classroom. The girl asked if he was leaving, but he was worried about Haiju's safety.
Students began to pour out of the school gates, the day finally over.
Elsewhere, a group of thugs confirmed they had received the photo of their new target.
The thug asked how they would find her without a picture. Their leader simply described her short height and distinct hairstyle. His crew was completely baffled by the incredibly vague description.
The leader's finger pointed directly at a girl who matched the vague description.
He smirked, confirming to his crew that this was indeed their target. Completely unaware, Haiju walked with purpose, a clear target for the waiting thugs. Lost in her dark thoughts, she bumped directly into a woman blocking her path.
The woman looked down, confirming she knew Haiju's name with a menacing tone. But Haiju met her gaze with defiance, asking what she wanted from her. The woman mocked Haiju's defiance, asking if she knew Kwon Sucheol. She then offered Haiju a choice: get beaten here or follow them quietly. To the woman's surprise, Haiju simply turned and began to lead the way. The woman was taken aback by Haiju's complete lack of fear. Meanwhile, the boy who had confessed earlier was leaving the school.
His friend asked what was wrong as he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His friend pointed out that Haiju was being led away by the strange group.
He panicked, asking if he should report it, but his friend dismissed his concerns. He was unconvinced, a deep sense of dread telling him something was terribly wrong.
His friend urged him to follow, questioning if they should just let it happen.
A silent agreement passed between them as they turned to give chase.
But by the time they reached the street, Haiju and the thugs were nowhere in sight. The two students stared in disbelief, questioning how the group had vanished so quickly. In a dark alley, Haiju was violently thrown down a set of concrete stairs.
She looked up from the filthy ground, completely surrounded by the menacing thugs.
The leader ordered one of his men to stand guard at the entrance. The thug took his position, acting as a lookout for the group.
The leader then turned to the woman, demanding she tell him what she knew. The woman explained that Haiju's new role was to follow her instructions exactly. She was ordered to post a message online, posing as a helpless runaway student. The leader sneered that any money she received from the trap would belong to them. But instead of fear, a chilling smile spread across Haiju's face. The woman roared in fury, questioning if Haiju thought this was a joke. The leader stepped forward, promising to make her understand the situation.
He struck her with a vicious backhand, a cruel smile on his face.
Haiju crumpled to the ground, the thugs looming over her defeated form.
They mocked her pain, one cruelly boasting that he only targets women. Blood dripped from her hand, a testament to their brutal attack.
The leader mockingly suggested they talk things out to understand each other, but a voice declared this was boring, leaving the leader completely stunned. The entity's voice confirmed her dark thoughts, agreeing to begin their revenge now. The leader demanded to know what she meant, confused by her sudden defiance.
Her face twisted into a demonic grin as the entity declared it was time to eliminate the pests.
Enraged, the leader grabbed her hair, preparing to strike her down again.
But a massive wave of dark energy erupted from her, sending him flying.
The thug's eyes widened in pure shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. The dark energy violently slammed the rest of the thugs into the alley wall.
A monstrous tendril of pure darkness crushed the ground with immense force. Haiju looked down in horror as the thugs stared up in pure terror. A pillar of pure darkness erupted, tossing the thugs around like helpless dolls. Her face contorted into a demonic mask, her eyes glowing with pure malevolence.
Meanwhile, the students who had followed her had completely lost her trail. His classmate told him she was leaving for her after-school academy.
He explained that his mother only forced him to attend Korean classes, but a sudden, sharp pain shot through his head, causing him to cry out.
His classmate shook him, asking what was wrong as he clutched his head in pain.
A desperate psychic scream for help suddenly echoed deep within his mind. His eyes flashed gold as he realized the plea was coming from Haiju. Without a word, he suddenly broke into a sprint, leaving her stunned. She called out in confusion, asking where he was suddenly rushing off to. But he didn't answer, his legs moving with an impossible, superhuman speed. He vaulted off a nearby tree, a blur of impossible motion down the street. His face was a mask of pure focus, his body pushed to its absolute limit.
She could only stare as he vanished, the wind from his speed whipping past her. She could only ask herself how he was moving so impossibly fast. Meanwhile, the dark entity began to fully consume Haiju's spirit.
Its shadowy form enveloped her, swallowing her consciousness whole. A dark tendril shot forward, the thugs frozen in pure terror.
Wukong screamed, the entity's malevolent power flooding his senses.
The thug leader collapsed, gasping in pain and disbelief at the impossible sight.
The woman stared in disbelief, a curse escaping her lips in pure terror. Just then, Wukong landed silently at the entrance to the alley.
A dark tendril shot out, violently yanking the woman into the air.
The woman was slammed violently into the concrete floor by the dark energy.
A blood-curdling scream escaped her lips as she stared in horror.
The entity taunted her, asking if she wanted to play a fun game. The entity declared the game was tagged as its shadowy hand reached for the woman.
It explained the simple rule of its game. Get caught and you die.
Haiju then shot forward, a blur of motion aimed directly at her target. The entity's tendril slammed into the woman, her scream echoing in the alley.
Its voice whispered that it had caught her, her face frozen in pure terror. With a demonic grin, the entity declared that the game was now over for her.
The woman begged for her life as the dark tendrils violently ripped into her.
The thug leader could only stammer in horror at the impossible, bloody sight. His turn came next as the entity slammed into him with overwhelming force. The entity taunted the last thug, asking if he was ready to die too.
A single, brutal punch connected with overwhelming demonic force.
He could only watch in terror as his crew was brutally torn apart. A demonic grin spread across her face, relishing the carnage. It turned its attention to the final thug, asking if he was the last one.
The terrified man could only beg for his life, pleading to be spared. The entity promised a special end, vowing to tear him into 6 pieces. She shot forward with impossible speed, her foot a blur of dark energy. Wukong questioned his own body, wondering why he was moving so impossibly fast.
He looked back in shock, seeing his nimbus cloud trailing behind him.
He realized with a jolt that his divine cloud had followed him. The cloud propelled him forward, allowing him to land with impossible speed.
He cried out in disbelief, surfing through the air on his divine cloud. He wondered how he could possibly be moving along with his nimbus cloud. His divine cloud looped through the air, propelling him at impossible speeds.
The last thug screamed in terror as he was violently tossed into the air.
But the entity suddenly flinched, its attack interrupted by an unseen force.
Wukong stumbled, the incredible speed leaving his human body dizzy and nauseous. He shook off the nausea, his gaze locking onto the possessed girl. The entity turned, its attention shifting to the unexpected arrival at the alley's entrance. The terrified thug looked at Wukong, wondering if he was the one who had just intervened. The entity taunted the thug, asking if he wanted to play a fun game. Wukong listened in horror as it explained the deadly rules of its game.
A massive tendril of darkness then shot forward, aimed at the final thug. Wukong glared at the possessed girl, declaring that the entity was already dead.
The entity's grin widened as it promised to grind his bones into dust. He met its monstrous fist with his own, a shockwave of power erupting from the impact. The entity stared in utter disbelief, its attack completely halted by the boy. It couldn't comprehend how his bones hadn't shattered from the immense force.
A brilliant golden light flared in his eye, the source of his impossible strength.
Wukong's hand shot out, grabbing the possessed girl with immense force.
A brilliant golden light erupted as he lifted the dark spirit into the air. A blood-curdling scream tore from Haiju as the dark entity was violently expelled. He declared that the being before him was not Haiju at all, but he was confused by the strange, metallic sound of its voice. The entity roared in fury, demanding to know what he thought it was. The entity lashed out, its dark tendrils aiming to shred him to pieces. But he met the assault with a single, impossibly fast counter move. He then vaulted off the wall, flipping through the air with golden light. He twisted through the air, his body a blur of golden energy. Trapped within the darkness, Haiju's true self cried out for rescue. He landed and unleashed a devastating punch, striking the entity with all his might. He roared, demanding the entity release Haiju from its dark control. He planted his foot, preparing to unleash another impossibly powerful attack. He launched himself into the air, delivering a devastating kick to the entity. The entity snarled, demanding to know if he was one of its kind. Wukong feigned confusion, questioning what the monstrous entity meant. It then lashed out with a massive shadowy claw, aiming to tear him apart. He countered with a devastating kick, sending the dark entity flying. The entity noted he was one of its kind, but his power wasn't fully awakened. It promised to see him later, curious about his true identity. The entity scoffed, calling his demand absolutely ridiculous. He stood his ground, demanding that the entity give Haiju back. It snarled that he was getting on its nerves, not wanting to fight one of its own kind. He settled into a fighting stance, his fists ready for the coming battle.
The entity grinned, noting he was unarmed and deciding to take advantage of it.
It then unleashed a massive swarm of dark tendrils directly at him, but his golden eyes flared with power, completely unfazed by the attack. A monstrous laugh echoed from the entity, its face twisted with glee. Its voice echoed with a simple, chilling promise to kill him.
The scene shifts back to the secluded home nestled deep within the mountains.
Inside, the Bodhisattva sat in deep meditation, her senses suddenly sharpening. A faint energy signature reached her, one she recognized as a divine deva. The sudden connection sent a jolt of pure agony through her mind.
She shot to her feet, her meditation completely shattered.
A look of alarm crossed her face as she realized the grave danger.
The entity used Hydra's body as a puppet, its dark power swirling around her. He stammered in shock, questioning what this monstrous presence was. The entity sneered, recognizing his power from before and vowing to kill him.
Its dark tendrils lashed out with impossible speed, aiming to overwhelm him. But Wukong met the attack with a powerful kick, deflecting the dark energy. The force of the blow sent a jolt of pain through his unprepared human body.
He followed up with another powerful kick, aiming to crush the dark spirit.
The resulting shockwave was immense, shattering the concrete beneath him. But the recoil was too much, sending him flying back with a scream of pure agony.
The entity's face twisted with rage as it prepared to unleash its full power. A devastating blast of dark energy erupted, tearing through the alley. Wukong was slammed to the ground, the entity looming over his defeated form. The entity pointed a single finger, its red eyes glowing with malice.
A dark tendril erupted, sending Wukong flying helplessly through the air. It clenched its fist, its voice promising to crush him completely. The dark tendril slammed into him, sending him hurtling through the air. It then formed a massive blade of dark energy, its red eyes glowing with malice.
The dark blade slammed into the ground with devastating force.
Wukong crashed into the ground, the impact creating a massive crater.
The entity's monstrous hand then snatched him from the rubble.
It mocked him, calling him a low-level deva in an unsuitable body. It threatened to kill Hydra, forcing him to start his communion from scratch.
The entity then demanded an apology for his disrespect towards the Sonil.
Massive, shadowy fists then closed in, preparing to crush him completely.
The entity's shadowy fists closed in, preparing to end him once and for all.
A scream of pure agony erupted as the dark power crushed his human body.
He choked out a final gasp, the entity's power overwhelming him completely. His body went limp, the last of his strength finally giving out. The entity commanded him not to pass out, promising to inflict unimaginable pain.
But then, a sudden, powerful throb echoed from deep within his chest.
Its glowing red eye widened, sensing a sudden, impossible change.
A brilliant golden light erupted, blasting the shadowy fists away. It stared in disbelief, questioning what this impossible power could be.
Wukong descended, his body now a vessel for an ancient golden energy.
His feet touched the ground with a quiet thud, his power now contained.
He looked down, his expression now cold and completely devoid of fear.
His eyes now burned with a brilliant, ancient golden light.
The entity stammered in disbelief, recognizing this overwhelming divine power. He calmly raised his hand, forming a sign to summon his true weapon.
A golden light flashed as his divine weapon began to emerge from his ear.
The staff grew to an immense size as he swung it with divine purpose.
The Rui Jingu Bang slammed into the ground, its true immense form finally revealed. His golden eyes burned with a cold fury. His true power finally awakened.
The entity stammered, questioning how a mere deva could survive its attack.
He pointed a single finger, commanding his divine weapon to strike.
The divine weapon slammed into the entity with immense, crushing force.
It shrieked in disbelief, realizing its opponent was far from defeated. He then unleashed a furious barrage, his staff a blur of golden light.
The entity was violently ripped from Hydra's body, landing in a heap, but it quickly reformed, its body a writhing mass of shadowy hands. Its glowing red eye burned with pure, unadulterated hatred.
His true form was finally revealed, a god radiating immense golden power.
The entity recognized the impossible hand techniques of a legendary being. He stood over the cowering spirit, his divine weapon aimed with deadly intent.
His divine staff came crashing down, aiming to obliterate the terrified spirit. But the entity realized Wukong was not yet in full control of his power. It decided to flee, planning to return with other devas and someone named Ursula.
The entity transformed into a dark projectile, desperately trying to flee.
But his divine staff slammed into it, a shriek of agony echoing out. Wukong brought his staff down again, determined not to let it escape. His divine staff became a cage of golden light, striking the entity relentlessly.
The entity roared in disbelief, unable to comprehend his relentless assault.
A new power gathered in his palm, a swirling vortex of golden flame. He unleashed the golden flame, a devastating blast of pure divine energy.
The entity was completely obliterated, its final shriek echoing as it died. He stood amidst the fiery aftermath, the alley now a scene of utter destruction. The last of the thugs lay dead, a final casualty of the divine battle.
He looked up, his divine power finally beginning to recede from his body. But his stomach suddenly began to swell, his shirt ripping apart violently. His human form began to swell uncontrollably, his muscles distorting grotesquely. But his golden eyes remained calm, unfazed by the monstrous transformation.
Haiju, now free of the entity, gently poured a strange liquid into his mouth.
She explained the holy nectar was the only thing that saved him from disintegrating. Now knowing his true identity, she promised that they would meet again.
Her gaze fell upon the two unconscious students, her next move uncertain.
A lone street lamp cast a soft glow against the starry night sky. The two sat together on a park bench, a quiet moment after the chaos. But her mind was racing, a thoughtful suspicion crossing her face. His head suddenly slumped onto her shoulder, his body going completely limp.
He jolted awake with a start, crying out for his mother in utter confusion. Ha-Seon looked around, asking Haiju why they were sitting on a park bench. He admitted he remembered following her, but his memory was a complete blank after that. Haiju then asked him why he had followed her in the first place. He confessed it was because Suchul was bothering her, leaving her completely stunned.
He admitted that he only wanted to help her deal with the bully. His simple, kind words brought tears to her eyes. She broke down crying, leaving Ha-Seon completely flustered by her reaction.
He panicked, asking if he had done something wrong and apologizing profusely.
She looked up, wiping her tears away and offering him a heartfelt thank you.
Ha-Seon stared back, completely bewildered by her sudden gratitude. A small, kind smile spread across Ha-Seon's face.
He offered his friendship, telling her to just let him know if she struggled. His words overwhelmed her, and she could only stammer her thanks through her tears. The alley was now a crime scene, cordoned off by yellow police tape.
A mysterious man strode past the line, the officers saluting him with respect.
His polished shoes stepped forward, entering the scene of utter devastation. He surveyed the bloody aftermath, the sheer destruction leaving him speechless. His expression hardened, a mix of disbelief and cold fury in his eyes. He stood in silent contemplation, trying to piece together what could have caused this. His eyes narrowed, a cold fury burning within his determined gaze. One of his men approached, addressing him nervously as the team leader.
An officer reported that all nearby CCTV footage had mysteriously vanished. The team leader questioned how it was possible for no footage to have been transmitted. The security camera itself appeared completely undamaged and fully operational. He concluded no human could possess such strength, but the officer confirmed they had no witnesses. He ordered his team to run ID checks and ensure the incident never reached the press. The team leader then warned the officer to keep his mouth shut about what he'd seen.
The investigation then led them to a large, imposing government building. Ha-Seon's mother burst in, demanding to know what was wrong. She found her son on the bed, hunched over and gasping for air. His hands were trembling, completely drenched in a cold sweat. He tried to convince himself that the terrifying events were just a nightmare. His mother let out a sigh of relief, believing it was all just a bad dream. She told him to get more sleep, as it was only 3 in the morning. But she paused in the doorway, a sudden thought crossing her mind. She commented that he seemed a little different, leaving him confused.
She studied him closely, a deep suspicion forming in her mind.
Her words lingered in the air. She quietly closed the door behind her. He touched his face, wondering what she could have possibly meant.
He walked over to the mirror, needing to see for himself if something had changed.
He stared intently at his reflection, searching for what his mother had seen.
He touched his chin, assessing his own features with a strange detachment.
But his eyes held a new, sharp intensity that wasn't there before.
A small, confident smirk began to form on his lips. He was suddenly struck by the thought that he was the most handsome in the world.
He recoiled in horror, wondering why he was having such absurd thoughts. He wondered if he was still dreaming, questioning his own strange behavior. He touched his cheek, confused by these actions that were so unlike him. But then he struck a pose, a sudden wave of self-admiration washing over him. He cringed, realizing Wukong's thoughts had taken over while he was off guard. Looking back at his reflection, he realized something felt deeply wrong.
A strange emotion began to boil in his chest, a feeling he couldn't identify. The scene shifts to a woman named Heji, who winks at her audience.
She explained to her viewers that she was feeling more energetic than usual. Meanwhile, Hosseon stared at his phone with a look of deep concern.
The next day on the bus, another student stared in shock at the same video. In the classroom, a female student was completely captivated by the streamer's broadcast.
Her friend asked what she was watching. Surprised he didn't know the famous streamer, she explained the streamer's ghost story theme and a rumor she could reach through the screen. She admitted she didn't believe the rumor, but found the stream entertaining anyway.
The streamer described symptoms of memory loss, linking them to an evil spirit's manifestation. She asked her viewers to report anyone exhibiting these strange symptoms.
Hosseon's eyes widened in shock as he listened to her broadcast. His mind flashed back to Haiju, a chilling suspicion beginning to form.
She asked him what was wrong, commenting that he seemed a little different today.
Before he could answer, she reached out to get a closer look at his face. She then pinched his cheek, trying to figure out what had changed about him. She leaned in closer, asking why he suddenly looked so handsome. He joked that he was always handsome, his confidence surprising her. But then he froze, his sudden change in demeanor leaving her confused.
She was surprised he could say such things, calling him clueless before.
He scratched his head, casually asking if that was really the case. The scene then shifts to a tranquil mountain range under a clear blue sky.
A small deer-like creature bounded playfully along a mountain path.
It paused for a moment, sniffing the air for a familiar scent. But then it whipped its head around, its attention suddenly captured.
It was drawn towards a dark cave, sensing a strange energy within.
A brilliant flash of light suddenly erupted from the darkness. An immense shockwave sent the creature flying back with incredible force. A volley of enchanted swords suddenly streaked through the air towards the cave.
The terrified creature could only watch as the blades flew into the darkness, but the blades were suddenly repelled, flying back out of the cave's mouth. The figure inside unleashed a swirling counter-attack of their own.
They then launched into the sky, riding one of the enchanted swords. The sword embedded itself in the ground as the figure landed with purpose.
The mysterious figure's long white hair flowed, their expression deeply somber. He admitted to himself that he had just committed an unnecessary killing. His eyes blazed red as a ball of fire ignited in his hand. With a single swing, he unleashed a devastating attack with his flaming sword. The fiery projectile shot through the air, aimed directly at the dark cave. It slammed into the ground, erupting in a massive, fiery explosion. He paused, a deep sense of unease washing over him. A monstrous entity revealed it had sensed the energy of someone named Exoko disappear. A single drop of liquid fell from above, alerting him to a new presence. He moved with impossible speed, deflecting the mysterious liquid. Strange bubbles containing human faces suddenly floated all around him. A mysterious voice called out to Sarah, declaring that his true self had awakened. The voice revealed she was an envoy for the heavenly honored ones. The woman confirmed she had taken blood first, leaving the body in peak condition. Her new mission was to find Exoko's traces, guided by the dead man's strong scent. She noted Exoko's energy had vanished, wondering if celestial messengers were responsible. A monstrous woman declared it was time to begin tearing and killing. The scene then shifts to Haiju walking alone down a quiet street. She looked completely drained, the dark circles under her eyes telling a story of trauma. But a sinister energy suddenly flared, her eye glowing with the familiar red malice. Dark, twisted veins began to crawl up her arm, a sign of the corruption taking hold. The dark veins pulsed with malevolent energy, spreading down her legs. She moved with an unnatural purpose, her body now a twisted, corrupted vessel. Her dark procession was interrupted by a man calling out a different name, Sarah. She turned to face the man, her expression hollow and drained. He smiled warmly, asking if she was feeling better now. But she remained silent, her dark eyes staring back at him without a word. He watched her walk away, a flicker of confusion on his face. His wife asked what was wrong, remembering Sarah as a bright kid who now seemed different. She reasoned that a long illness was the cause for her changed demeanor. She remarked that Sarah had grown up so much, no longer the sick child she remembered.
He questioned where she was going as her path led away from the school. Meanwhile, a hand tore through the police tape at the scene of the crime.
Heji stood in the center of the alley, surveying the utter devastation.
A strange, ethereal energy began to swirl and gather in her hands.
The power then erupted from her body in a massive, swirling vortex. The swirling energy condensed, forming a strange substance in her hands. She brought the substance to her lips, inhaling its strange essence. The energy revealed the presence of two other humans at the scene. The first presence was a manifested being with the strong scent of heaven, but the other was a boy, and she questioned if he was truly just human. The conflicting visions left her reeling, trying to understand what she had seen. An officer rushed in, warning her to leave the dangerous crime scene immediately. But Heji commanded him to be quiet, preparing to ask him a question. The officer stared in confusion, wondering what she could possibly be asking him. She asked the confused officer what exactly happened in this alley that day.
Her vision showed her the past, revealing Wukong in his true form.
The officer grabbed her shoulder, trying to snap her out of the vision.
He warned her to leave immediately or face the consequences, but she suddenly grabbed his hand, her grip stopping him cold.
She turned, her eyes wide and her face a mask of terrifying power.
The officer stammered in pure terror as she questioned how he dared to interfere. Her face stretched into a monstrous maw as she unleashed a terrifying, inhuman scream.
The officer lay unconscious on the ground, the wall behind him completely shattered. Her power left the officer suspended and unconscious against the alley wall. Elsewhere in the city, another day began under a clear sky.
A new entity learned Exoco was destroyed by a heavenly being as a human watched.
The man asked if they could find the witness, but she was already tracking their scent.
She explained their priority was to identify the manifested being through the witness.
Meanwhile, back at the school, the teachers were gathered in the faculty meeting room. The discipline teacher forced Kwon Suchul to write a letter of apology.
He gritted his teeth, sarcastically writing that he was sorry for his mistakes. But he suddenly snapped, vowing he would never apologize, and throwing his pen.
The teacher who had taken the bribe entered the office, calling out Suchul's name.
He shot to his feet, defiantly declaring he had finished his letter of apology.
But she calmly informed him that a police officer was here looking for him.
The officer addressed the teacher, noting how difficult it must be to guide students. He claimed to be an expert with kids like Suchul, asking her to leave them alone. The officer then closed the door, trapping Suchul inside with him for questioning. Suchul furiously accused the teacher of betraying him and calling the police. The officer calmly told him to sit down as Suchul tried to dismiss his past actions.
But the officer slammed down 4 photos of mysterious individuals in suits. The officer questioned why the last call from one of the victims was to Suchul.
He then delivered the shocking news that every single person in the photos was dead. The officer grimly confirmed the news, his expression leaving no room for doubt.
The officer ignored Suchul's panic, demanding to know why he called the victims. He offered a pathetic excuse, claiming he was bored and just filed a complaint. But the officer pressed him for details, leaving the terrified bully completely speechless. The officer's eyes narrowed, sensing the bully was hiding a crucial detail.
But his interrogation was cut short by an urgent, unexpected phone call. He shot to his feet in a panic, demanding to know which hospital.
The officer suddenly sprinted from the room, leaving Suchul utterly bewildered. The team leader realized why he hadn't received a report, wondering who to send next.
Meanwhile, Ha-seon stood alone in the school hallway, his gaze fixed on Haiju. Haiju walked with a strange purpose, entering the girls' restroom, but his classmate called out a different name, her voice filled with confusion.
Haiju stopped and turned, her classmate calling out the unfamiliar name of Sarah. The girl asked if Sarah was healed, mentioning a rumor about a deadly disease, but Sarah simply stared back, her expression completely hollow and unresponsive.
Seeing her casual clothes, the classmate nervously asked when she planned to return.
Without a single word, Sarah continued down the hallway, leaving her classmate behind. The girl was left speechless, completely unnerved by Sarah's terrifyingly vacant stare. She paused in the hallway, her gaze fixed on the sign for classroom 1-1. Inside the classroom, a student with long hair looked up with a somber expression, but Ha-seon suddenly strode forward, his focus locked entirely on Sarah. He grabbed her wrist, stopping her just as she reached the classroom door.
A sinister purple light suddenly flared within her vacant eyes. A golden aura erupted around Ha-seon as he sensed the familiar dark presence.
The entity's voice echoed in his mind, identifying him as the witness. The entity's voice echoed directly in his mind, a chillingly familiar sound. He froze, his golden eyes widening as he realized it knew his name. The entity looked up in surprise, questioning how he could possibly be here. The entity suggested they talk later, its face twisted into a terrifying grin. He nervously agreed, and the entity instructed him to meet at a cafe after school. The entity agreed to the meeting, turning away with a knowing, sinister smile.
He watched her walk away, his fist clenched in silent frustration.
His classmate called out a final farewell, telling Sarah to take care. She was left completely bewildered, questioning what she had just witnessed. He thought her speech sounded strangely robotic, like an artificial intelligence.
She questioned why Sarah was suddenly pretending to be close only to him.
She shook him violently, demanding to know if he was even listening.
He realized with a jolt that he couldn't hear Sarah breathing at all. His mind flashed with a horrifying vision of the entity possessing her.
The monstrous face stared back at him, its red eyes burning with malice. The scene shifts to Sarah, sitting alone in a cafe with a vacant stare.
She watched the world pass by, feeling completely disconnected from it.
She admitted to herself that she just wanted to live a normal life.
Her true self suddenly screamed out, demanding to know who was controlling her.
Elsewhere, the entity tracking the witness watched a couple with a sinister smile. The entity realized the outburst was just a lingering memory from the body's true owner. The entity scoffed, annoyed that it hadn't fully taken control of the body.
It ran its hands over its chest, a strange and unsettling gesture. A dark, corrupting energy began to swirl around its very fingertips. Its eyes narrowed with sinister intent, promising one more addition to the corruption.
With a vicious snarl, it began to brutally twist its own hand, suppressing Sarah's spirit. The host body hunched over, her hands trembling from the overwhelming, agonizing pain.
A memory surfaces of Sarah, deathly ill in a hospital bed as her parents watch.
Her mother clutched her hand, promising that they were all going to heaven.
Her father added that God would take the entire family, a chillingly blissful promise.
The memory shows a dying Sarah, questioning the very idea of God.
Her spirit was drawn from her body towards her parents' blissfully smiling faces. A faceless being, flanked by two others, declared that it was the God they worshipped.
It told them to discharge Sarah, promising to ask its father to save her. But salvation would take 30 years unless they paid an express fee for their wealth. The entity clenched its fist, the dark memory fueling its corrupting power.
It questioned why the host's spirit kept resurfacing, no matter how hard it tried.
The scene shifts to the school, where another day was beginning. The boy asked if she wanted to go, but she was still annoyed with Sarah. She then angrily warned him to be extremely careful. He then asked about Suchul's friends, mentioning a rumor they were bothering her. She listed of Suchul's powerful friends from various classes, including their own. She asked if Jae-sung had bothered him, but Ha-seon said he was being cautious.
He then playfully asked if she was upset with him instead of Sarah. His confident joke left her flustered, wondering why she was overreacting to him.
She waved a final goodbye, leaving him standing there in confusion,
but a confident smirk spread across his face as he touched his ear.
Elsewhere, a fist clenched with a dark, murderous energy.
It lashed out with its hand, the dark energy flaring with malice. The dark corruption spread further up its arm as it fought for control. The cafe workers watched, commenting on her strange and unsettling gestures. The female worker noted that the girl kept repeating a strange gesture, but her attention was suddenly caught by a notification on her phone. She excitedly told him it was from the popular streamer, Heji. She told him he would recognize the famous streamer the moment he saw her.
On the screen, Heji began her broadcast, discussing evil spirits like Genshi.
She explained they were corpses that moved as though they were still alive.
She revealed that if a host dies, the evil spirit completely takes over the body. The corpse then becomes a permanent vessel for the malevolent entity.
They use the host's memories to perfectly blend in with other humans.
Heji explained they could even mimic the habits of the body they inhabit. This allows them to flawlessly move through the world without suspicion. They can perfectly impersonate the deceased person whose life they've stolen. Heji explained that if dark memories remain, they can even affect the spirit. The host's lingering depression and bad memories can infect the possessing entity. The spirit then tries to shake off the negative energy attached to the body. The entity clutched its shoulder, trying to physically cast off the host's lingering despair. It made a strange gesture, as if trying to wave the bad memories away.
It smiled, deciding to simply pull out the painful memory and blow it away. The cafe workers were completely engrossed in Heej's chilling broadcast. Their heads snapped towards the girl, who was making the exact same gesture. Heej's broadcast then asked if there was anyone nearby acting in this strange way. She then provided a number, urging her audience to report anyone they saw.
The male worker was almost fooled, but his co-worker quickly dismissed the idea. But their conversation was cut short by the sound of the cafe door opening. Ha-seon strode into the cafe, his arrival announced by the worker's greeting.
He scanned the room, his eyes searching for the girl he was meant to meet.
The entity looked up, her expression twisting as she saw him approaching.
He approached the table and asked if she had been waiting long for him. He sat down and asked why she requested a private meeting, wondering what she wanted to say.
Her expression twisted with menace as she asked if he had perhaps witnessed something.
Her question was a chilling reference to the alley, confirming his worst fears.
He stammered in shock, demanding to know why she would ask such a thing. He declared that she wasn't the real Sarah, as a monstrous vision filled his mind. Wukong's mind was suddenly flooded with evil thoughts, questioning why they kept appearing.
But the entity suddenly recoiled, clutching its head in a fit of rage. It fought to shake off the host's lingering emotions, fearing it would go insane.
She suddenly stood and left, claiming something urgent had come up and leaving him confused. A strange red energy suddenly flared in his chest, his golden eyes widening in shock.
He clutched his chest, wondering why his heart was suddenly racing so fast. He wondered if this was a sign, a silent command for him to follow.
It staggered outside, the dark corruption flaring as it fought for control.
The entity clutched its chest, furious at the host's lingering spirit. It sprinted down the street, desperate to escape the host's rebellious spirit. A blood-curdling scream erupted as it tried to crush the host's lingering consciousness.
The memory resurfaced of the strange figures who had questioned if she was the child. The memory shows her parents confirming they had discharged her from the hospital.
The faceless being stood over the dying girl, a false savior in white.
Sarah could only stare up in terror, a prisoner in her own dying body. The memory revealed the being who had promised to save her life. The entity recalled the moment it had first laid claim to this body.
A cruel smirk spread across its face, relishing the memory of its deception.